Go 2025, December, we're here. I can't believe how fast this year has gone by, the second half. It was amazingly speed-like. I mean, we speed run through the second half of 2025. I blinked there in that new moon in Cancer, 25 June, and it's almost like, boom, everything just sped up. It's like a speeding train into now. Uranus came to Gemini, of course, in early July. That's a fast energy. The fastest sign probably, Gemini. Air, speeding fast, right? You fly through the air, you go really fast as you fly through the air. Uranus is lightning, right? Fast strikes. So I think that has something to do with it. But I also think it has to do with the nature of the retrograde delay. When you look back at 2025, it was the Mars retrograde and the Venus retrograde that defined that slow moving beginning. And it only wasn't until June when everything got new signs, if you recall. And then since then, it's just been lightning fast. You know, and I think that's a theme here in 2025. December is that there's more of that speed and there's more of that sort of chaos of fast moving, a lot happening, having to navigate this idea of being a little bit out of control, especially the first half of December 2025. And so in this video, we're going to talk about it a little bit and break down a little bit of these themes for you on the cusp here of 2026. And that's going to be also a theme this month of 2025, is that by the time we get to the second half, we will have a stellium in Capricorn upon Venus's entry on Christmas Eve. When Venus enters Capricorn, it will join both the Sun and Mars there. So you'll have 3 planets in Capricorn, a stellium, traditionally defined as, in my view, 3 planets or more in the same sign house. So you've got that to end the month. And the beautiful thing about Capricorn and the pileups in Capricorn at the end of the month is that it's safe from Saturn. And in fact, those pileups sextile their domicile lord Saturn in Pisces, and they're with the exaltation lord Mars in Capricorn. That's a clear theme, which is that you get towards the end of December and the beginning of next year, and there's a lot of opportunity to hit the ground running and put in the time and effort and energy to make tangible the earth element, cardinal sign of the earth element Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, long-term thinking, ruled by Mars, the engine of make, do, and build. That all defines this time here into December, beginning of 2026. And so it's very exciting because I think where we stand today as I record this, grand water trines for months. You've had so much in Scorpio, including a Mercury retrograde there. You've had Venus in Scorpio. You've had Saturn finishing out its time in Pisces, the dream-like surreality of Pisces. You've had Jupiter trying to heal us in Cancer. And that's been so heavy and more internalized and more dreamlike and more time dissolving, right? Saturn, planet of time, in the dissolution sign of Pisces. And so as time has been dissolved into this emotional state of depth and wounds and blurs of time, you might say, it's going to be well earned and very much needed, in my view, this Capricorn energy at the end of December and at the beginning of next year to get stuff implemented and get it practically enhanced, verified, and brought through into the form that a lot of these things want to take here for 2026. And so that's the second half of December. Mind you, and everybody will be talking about this. I was just on the ISAR Year Ahead podcast with Dan Waits and with some other astrologers on that show, talking about 2026, and we were all in agreement, and I'm certainly in agreement in saying this here, that the support for make, do, and build and structural implementation is so important here into December, beginning of January, because we get even more chaotic. We get even more kind of out of control in terms of births of new things. We have eclipse in Aquarius 3 days after Saturn re-enters Aries. That's going to be probably hard to grasp and handle, and a lot of bursts forth of newness and innovative things and breakdowns of structures and all kinds of craziness. But before all that happens in February and after the first half of December, you get this Capricorn power with Venus and Mars, relational planets. So it's like, let's get our team together and start working as a team. That's all evoked here in December 2025, early January 2026. That's the context of this moment of astrology, guys, is preparing and building to that and taking advantage of that basically Capricorn season, because the Sun enters Capricorn on the 21st of December, Mars enters Capricorn on the 15th of December, and then Venus joins on the 24th of December, and then guess what enters on the first day of 2026? Mercury. So you actually have a 4-planet stellium in Capricorn for a lot of the beginning of the year until Venus enters Aquarius on the 17th. So that's a long time. That's 16 days of 4 planets in Capricorn. That's heavy duty, and it's perfect, again, because of the configurations are actually quite supportive to make, do, and build and get a lot done. Jupiter's in Cancer for all of that as well. So I don't want to get too ahead to January, but when you talk about December, that is the context for December, because all of that begins piling up here by the end of the month. Now let's come back to the first part of December 2025. I've been thinking about this a lot because it's really strange, given the grand water trine context, to have these planets now in Sagittarius. Venus is entering Sagittarius just as I'm recording this on Sunday, the 30th. The Sun's been there for a few days. Mars has been there for a longer time. Mercury stationed retrograde there, but will return there on the 11th of December. But what is that like? What can it feel like? Oh, and all of those planets in Sagittarius will square Saturn in December. It's just a series of squares to Saturn all month. So these are the squares to Saturn. Saturn in Pisces, newly stationed direct here at the end of November, but then will be hit by every planet in Sagittarius here in December. So Mars squares Saturn 9 December. I think that is a real line in the sand, because after that Mars and Saturn are separating, and then on the 15th of December Mars leaves Sagittarius and begins to sextile Saturn in a reception with Pisces and Capricorn. So there's a lot more support with the Mars-Saturn story second half of the month. 9th is the peak of that tension, and that's another theme. I'll say it here with December 2025. Tension and stress and chaos and too much happening and overwhelm until the 9th, when the malefic square Mars and Sagittarius, Saturn and Pisces perfects and begins to separate. So hold on and hang on. If these direct stations of Mercury and Saturn, as they've signaled forward movement here at the end of November, if that hasn't quite taken on for you yet, you may be needing to hang on until the Mars-Saturn story completes. That's a tough aspect. Anytime during a year, and it happens twice or sometimes 3 times a year, Mars and Saturn have a hard aspect with each other. And those are pockets where you always want to say, all right, maybe there's tension, maybe there's challenge, maybe there's stress. That's here first half of December 2025. And in fact, it's been here even into November. And I think that's a big part of the challenge of November. It was the Mercury retrograde, but the Mars-Saturn square was a big part of that challenge. Kind of under the surface here. Because the perfection isn't until 9 of December, so people don't talk about it. But it began as soon as Mars entered Sagittarius. It was applying, and by sign was operative. We've been under that pressure, and it's increasingly so here at the beginning of December. And Mars entered Sagittarius on the 4th of November, so it's really all in November this has been operative energy too, and I think that makes it even more of an important signature moment of when it clears, either 9 December with a perfected aspect with Saturn, or 15 December when Mars leaves Sagittarius, as a signature of, getting on the other side of some of the tension over the last few weeks, and how beneficially positive in a compared way the end of December, beginning of January may be, because you lose that malefic square aspect. So Mars squares Saturn on 9 December. The Sun will square Saturn, Sun in Sagittarius, Saturn in Pisces on 17 December. Venus will square Saturn, Sagittarius to Pisces again on 21st December. And then Mercury squares Saturn on 30 December. You see how it's all month. 9, 17, 21, and 30 will have Sagittarius to Saturn squares. Sagittarius to Saturn and Pisces squares. And that defines the month of December. 2 more things. Two or three more things that I'm going to get out of here. I don't want to make this go on and on. 1, remember, Jupiter in Cancer rules Sagittarius and rules Pisces. What does that mean? It means that there's a flow back to the Jupiter in Cancer power of this moment. It's also been here all of fall and since the summer. But particularly in fall, it's taken center stage with those grand water trines. And Jupiter in Cancer, continue to think about it. I'm going to say it every video that I make right now, because so much flows back to Jupiter via rulership. Pisces by domicile, Sagittarius by domicile. And it's the nurturance, the truth of how you need to be loved and how you need to love yourself. And I'm not talking about romantic, erotic, getting high or something like this. I'm talking about true love, the practice of love, meaning how do you care for yourself? How do you give yourself what your needs are at a deeper level? How do you care for the people around you? This is kind of, I think about it as agape, the highest level of divine expression of care and consideration and nurturance that we are capable of giving ourselves and giving the people around us. And how often those realizations of what we truly need then create actions. Once you have a realization of, oh wow, these are my needs, oh wow, this is how I can love myself, it's just a natural flow to implement it. So keep that going here in December. Even if it gets a little tense and a little bit chaotic and a lot happening and too much to handle and feeling out of control. Mutability, Pisces, Sagittarius, mutability, especially the fire immutable Sagittarius. If those feelings are palpable, you can default back to how do you best nurture and love and care for yourself and the people around you. And that will be your silver bullet here in December. There's two more things. There's a full moon on 4 December, and I'm gonna get this out as soon as I can. It may be the days right before this full moon, but this full moon is the peak of this tension or intensity. And it's right with what we call the north bending, which is the point that is between the north node, and as planets move through the zodiac, they hit this point called the north bending, which is exactly square the lunar nodes. It's the point where the moon's path begins to turn down, because the north node is when the moon rises above the ecliptic in the path of the sun. From the point of the north node to the south node, the moon is higher than the solar path. The north bending is where it begins to turn down, and that's 13 degrees. This full moon in Gemini, exactly square the lunar nodes. That's tense, that's triggering, that evokes the eclipse stories in the mutable axis. Remember 2025, you had 3 eclipses in Virgo Pisces in 2025. Next year we'll have 2 eclipses in Virgo Pisces. 2027 we have 1 eclipse in Virgo. So we're right in the middle of the fated, triggered changes in our mutable axis, particularly Virgo Pisces, but then get reverberated into Sagittarius and Gemini vis-a-vis rulership and vis-a-vis angularity. That's a theme here of this chaotic moment at the beginning of the month in December. Where is the fate? There's palpable features of deeper fate, or this is why I'm here, or all of these nodal energies. They will be present, and you can get into these by trying to feel into notions of fate. What is really true? What is the sense of divine intervention that's operating in your life? What are intuitively things that you know to be true and right? Let those assert and sort of take over, even if it's a little bit tense, even if it's a little bit chaotic, even if it's a little bit too much to handle. That can be a rudder during this mutable T-square full moon in Gemini. It's really not until the end of the month that this mutability clears. And it's so cool because I think we will feel it greatly. Like, wow, that's done, that's cleared. And then we get those sextiles with Pisces and Capricorn to really bring the imagination into a palpable, implemented form, way more so than it's been. Cardinal sign Capricorn, can't wait to feel that energy at the end of the month and beginning of 2026. And the final thing I've been thinking about, what is this energy like? Like, how can we analogize it? And it came to me finally today. The water element, these grand water trines are like a dream, especially with Saturn and Pisces, and even with Mars in Scorpio and all of the Scorpionic, and Mercury in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer. The water element is like sleep. I mean, that's really what it's about. The moon rules Cancer. There's a sense of sleeping that can be evoked with the water element. You don't talk in your sleep or it's unintelligible. That fits the water element. The moon, the body, rules Cancer. So as we've been in this deep sleep or this deep dream state or this deep internalized exploration, and then you have this Sagittarius stellium to kick off this month. Venus entering Sagittarius again on 30 November, Mercury on 11 December, Sun and Mars there now. It's almost like getting woken up. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but when you wake up and you're like, first of all, are you awake or are you asleep? And then you're like, whoa, am I? Then you snap to it that you're awake. You're like, oh shoot, I'm awake. Then you look at your watch and you're like, oh wow, I've got all this stuff to do. You may be running late for stuff, having slept so deeply. You stumble out of bed, you're still groggy, but yet you have to get moving because there's demands of life that are calling you. That's what I think this first part of December 2025 is going to be. It's like that groggy waking state where you're in a little bit of a rush and there's a lot to get done because maybe you've overslept, or maybe you slept too deeply. We all have done that, right? Your alarm goes off maybe 2 or 3 times and you're finally awake and there's no time to do anything except to rush in to meet the demands or meet the obligations or meet the outward world events that maybe you've committed to or that are happening and you can't help but get caught up in. That's Sagittarius. The squares to Saturn and Pisces. It's still the reverberations of the dreams that we've been having and the sleeping state that we've been involved in, and having the tension between those two become quite palpable here. And I still think it's forward moving. Saturn direct, Mercury direct. It's just forward moving with an initial shock of wakefulness and trying to get our bearings. And the thing is that the end of December, beginning of January, those bearings are going to be set and we'll really have that chance to get grooving to end this year and to start next year with some highly productive and highly beneficial efforting for whatever your goals may be. So that's this little bit of a summary of December 2025. Guys, have a great month. And I know this is out a little bit later, but I think it'll give you some context to navigate the first half, the second half, and some into January. I will be here trying to make some more videos this month, more preparation for 2026, but do check out that ISAR podcast. I think the YouTube channel here, they're gonna tag me for a collab. You'll see it, I think, if you subscribe here, so subscribe here. It'll be me and them as collaborators, and it was a great conversation, so that'll help you prepare for 2026. I'm gonna release another another video just on the traditional planets, with the movements of the traditional planets, how to look at 2026 from that perspective, particularly because both Mars and Venus will retrograde, or they will enter retrograde cycles by the end of the year. And Venus technically retrogrades. Mars doesn't begin to retrograde until 2027, but it's deep into its retrograde cycle here in 2026. So I'm going to talk about that. So look for that video from me here. I'll try to do a season ahead video, as I love that way of looking at astrology, and then hopefully some other videos. But take care out there, everybody. Have a great month, and you can find me on Patreon, a lot more there, more videos more regularly. If you want more from me, thank you for all your support, and like and subscribe and all of that here, and we'll talk real soon. Okay, peace, take care, bye-bye.